Hello, hello. You can hear me? Okay. That's good. It does. The one over in the sanctuary, it's just bad. People talk into it and it muffles. You can't make out what they're saying. Finally? Good.
The other night at Yom HaShoah.
I couldn't make it. We were talking to Rich and couldn't get out of it.
It was such a shame because he was not using the mic right.
Oh, really? Why not?
Because he was doing this, but it kept going.
Oh,
I mean, I felt like saying, hold the mic up.
I mean,
I mean, I already have a reputation for that.
well, that's fine. Who blame you?
Yeah.
You got it?
Yeah.
Oh, look at all those
Yeah.
beautiful. Fantastic. Good. You got
Perfect.
it.
Now
You
you-
got it.
That's,
Eric, have that magic touch.
That's wonderful.
Help yourself, sir.
yeah, for sure, believe me,
Water.
for sure.
I need coffee to wake up. So maybe this table is too far back for you? We can move it up.
Where is everybody? Where is everybody?
I don't know where everybody is. Oh, yeah, they're all in back there.
Because I will. I'm trying to decide on the instrument. Where is everybody? Rosie?
What?
Where is everybody?
I have no idea.
This is terrible.
There's a lot of traffic on my freeway.
Was there? Yesterday was horrible. Really? My class didn't get there till half an hour late.
I don't know why there's so much traffic.
There was an accident at the 405 and 101 yesterday.
Oh.
And it fouled up so bad.
Morning, Rosie. Hi, Esther. Good morning.
How you doing?
I don't know where everybody is.
I'll talk to who's ever here. It will definitely be easier if people sit over here. They will have a much better experience.
Sit over here, Esther. That's why I see the screen better.
You'll have a much better experience if you sit where you can see the screen. Good morning, good morning.
It's always a good morning when I see it smile. You know, like someone frowned in the morning. Huh? Huh? I love smiles. And I love, the other thing I love, she knows it, I love positivity. When I was a teacher, I knew this truth in teaching. That faculty room was always a bitchy. I mean, if there was anything that You know what? What's going on at UCLA? What's going on at, where my daughter went to school at Pomona College?
What are they doing?
Huh?
Right, what are they doing? To grow up.
Okay, can I say this?
Yes.
This is Gary's interpretation.
Gary's interpretation.
Which doesn't mean anything to me.
Yes.
I think it's all orchestrated, planned. I think, you know, and I think that a lot of the people who are doing this are just being rabble-roused.
Yeah, but you need to resist rabble rousing.
Huh?
You know, everybody who shows up has to make a decision to be there.
You know what?
From
Not
my-
everybody's
From
as-
my point of view.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, then,
It's a
not,
law
I
enforcement,
forgot about that.
actually.
I'll go get
It
one.
is, it's a law
I
enforcement
don't,
problem.
I don't understand that.
What I mean is, I don't care whether they're demonstrating with
Okay, up I go.
or the Confederate flag or free pizza. You know, if you're in violation of
Oh, we all do
time,
that.
place, and manner, police come in, you make arrests, you move them out, and that's that.
We all agree with that.
Yes, so that's a
Huh?
law enforcement problem.
Even Biden said that, you know, we agree that you can have free speech, regardless of what it is. Whether it's people who are pro-abortion, or anti-abortion, you know, but you don't cause disruptions and violence, huh?
Right, right. I'm gonna get Rosalie actually to help me on this talk. Hi. You're gonna help me. I say,
That's really put it up.
next slide. You push that button.
Beautiful, even if it isn't, you gotta look, think positive.
Just the down arrow.
Let me go to restroom first.
Great. You'll be a lot happier if you sit over there and see the screen. I guarantee. Can you see? Can you see through me?
No?
You're gonna be much happier if you sit
Okay,
on
I'll
that
move
side.
that.
Right. So you can see the screen.
Okay, I'll leave.
Test, good. You'll be so much happier if you can sit where you can see the screen. I guarantee. Okay?
We're going to Turkey in 2 weeks. Yeah, we had this trip, and I'm not gonna wear my peacoat. We're taking a tour of the entire country. I'd love to. I've read 3 books on it.
Are you ready? Let's get going.
Good morning, everybody. I just heard from Adrian that quite a few of our members are away on trips. I think we have about 5 or 6 people that aren't here. So we should get going. All right, I'd like to introduce Jeff Goetesfeld. He's been a member of Adada Riel for, 12 years. And he's a regular at our services, and happy about that. We needed to have a lot of regulars. Anyway, we've had Jeff talked to MID previously on another book that he had written, and it was an outstanding presentation, and we asked him to come back, and he's always publishing these children's books, and he's here to talk to us about those books, and he brought quite a few copies, so if you'd like to buy one as well. So, okay,
Thank you, Rosalie.
you're welcome.
It's nice to see you in this room in your civilian clothes, right? Right, in your civvies. Yeah, I'm Jeff Gottesfeld. I have been a writer for a very long time, longer than I like to remember. I started out writing. Well, we'll talk through this. I'm here to talk to you about this book, 21 Steps, Guarding the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. It came out in 2021 for the 100th anniversary of the tomb. It's now in its 4th or its 5th printing. It's won a bunch of awards, and I'm the least likely person to write this book. We'll talk about why. Next slide. Next slide. Perfect. All right. So this will give you an idea of what I've written through the years and also a precursor to why I'm the least likely person to write this book. I wrote a lot of teen fiction in the 80s and 90s, books like Teen Angel and Girls on Film and any other number of series that your kids or your grandkids more likely were picking up in the supermarket or buying and devouring. I wrote a movie called Broken Bridges, which starred Kelly Preston, Toby Keith, the country star, and Burt Reynolds. I wrote for a couple of TV shows. I wrote for Smallville for a while, and then I was the associate head writer of The Young and the Restless on CBS, a show which continues to this day. And I've done some playwriting, including a play called The World's Strongest Librarian, which won some big award from the American Alliance for Theater and Education. So I'm a writer. I like to write, and I'm reasonably good at it, as opposed to like putting up drywall that I'm terrible at. Next slide. All right. So, as you could see, I wrote TV, and now I'm writing picture books and like what happened that would move me from one to the other. The shift occurred for me about 8 or 9 years ago. I got a little burned out on writing long form, and when I say long form, I mean things that take, a typical TV script is 5,000 dialogue words. A typical teen novel is 55,000 or 65,000 or 75,000 words. I'm telling you, after a while, at word 33,000, you look down the road and you realize you have just as much to write, and you've been at it for 2.5 months. It's like, enough with the words. My thumbs were starting to hurt because I touched the space bar on my computer keyboard enough times. I wanted to try something different, so I shifted toward writing for younger kids, but not very little kids, like not preschool, kindergarten, really 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, and these are some of the things I've written in the last 8 years for older kids. Illustrated, not by me. I'm the world's worst artist. All I do is write the words. We'll talk about how art gets into picture books in a few minutes. Next slide. All right, and then 21 Steps, and that's me in the LA National Cemetery in 2021 holding the book near a tombstone that says unknown. Next slide. All right, so why am I such an unlikely person to write this book? That's my birth certificate. It's a birth certificate, I think from New York City. I was born in New York in Mount Sinai Hospital in 1956, and like all people born in New York, you know, it had my birth date, it had my sex, and it had like the word liberal on there because you're a New Yorker. So how do you get from that to this book? We'll talk in a moment. Next slide. And that's me when I was a liberal kid. I'm with my brothers on the upper right in the backyard of my parents' place in Teaneck, New Jersey. And down on the bottom, that person there, that's me on my Teaneck High School Ultimate Frisbee team. There's a lot of guys with long hair in that picture. I was one of them. I was a serious leftist when I was in high school. I was an early protester, early for my age, in middle school even, against the war in Vietnam. My politics were somewhat to the left of Lenin. Next slide. And so I go from that to this. How did it happen? Next slide. All right. So there's this book, 21 Steps. How did I get to where, can I see what the next slide is? All right, we'll go back up one. All right, so how did I come to write this book and get interested in this issue? Obviously, my stance on the world changed over time. Who was it? I think it was Bertrand Russell or George Bernard Shaw said, like, if you're, or maybe it was Churchill, that, you know, if you're 17 years old and you're not a socialist, you have no heart. And if you're 47 years old and you're still a socialist, you have no brain. So I grew up. I traveled a great deal in the United States. I went to law school at the University of San Francisco in the early 1970s, and I saw what it meant to be on the left in San Francisco, and I saw particularly the amount of anti-Israel feeling and anti-Semitism. Already in 1978, we're 5 years after the 1973 war, amongst my cohort. Then I went to live in Europe. And I saw what it's like to be Jewish in France. And I saw what it's like to have this is before the fall of the Soviet Union. You know, I saw what it was like to go on a train through the Czech Republic at that time, crossing from Austria through there. I talked to people who had gotten out of Soviet Russia. And my politics started to shift. And then I came back to America, and they shifted a little further. And I came to understand the truth that the United States Armed Forces are, for all their problems, and there are plenty of problems. You talk to anybody who's ever been in the military, they will talk about the problems in the military. But the United States Armed Forces are the greatest fighting force for good in the history of the planet, bar none. There was a reason in Germany in the in 1944-45 when Germans wanted to be occupied by the Americans, not by the Russians. American soldiers have sacrificed for people not their own, over and over and over. So with this shift in my attitude, I started visiting national cemeteries on Memorial Day, no matter where I was living. I lived in Nashville, Tennessee through the 1990s. They have a big national cemetery there. When I lived in Salt Lake City in the aughts, there was a small national cemetery behind Fort Douglas. I went there. And now that I live in Los Angeles, every Memorial Day, I go to the National Cemetery. So I was there in 2016 on Memorial Day with my de facto wife, Beth, and our younger stepdaughter, Audrey, who was then, I don't know, 7th grade. And we're there Memorial Day. It's a lot of people. And I'm walking, it's vast, walking among the headstones. And I looked down and saw a headstone, and on it was the word unknown. All right, so this was a surprise to me. I had no idea that in that cemetery there were unknown soldiers buried. It's about 10:50 in the morning. We walk a little further, and I see a second headstone that says unknown. And that's the one that stopped me. I looked at it. I remembered a visit that I had made when I was a teen to Arlington National Cemetery and to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier there. Who's been there? Who's it? All right. Right. Well, if you haven't, there's still time. So I went to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier when I was 15, 16 years old. And as I'm standing in LA National Cemetery, looking at this headstone, I realize I don't know anything about the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Washington. I didn't know who was buried there. I didn't know when it was constructed. I didn't know where the marble came from. I knew nothing, and I certainly knew nothing about the men and women who guarded it and continue to guard it continuously every moment of every day, as I learned later, since midnight on July 2nd, 1937. Who were these people? Why would they do this? What would motivate them? How do you get to do it? By the time I left the cemetery that day, I was determined to write this book by noontime. So then I had that scary moment, okay, that all writers have, which is, what if somebody's done this already? So I rushed home, went straight to the computer, started digging around, and I saw that there was no picture book about the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Really? That thing's been there for 100 years or so, and no other writer has done a picture book? And here's me, Jeff Gottesfeld, who during the Vietnam years and the years afterward was like so anti-military, you couldn't believe, like, no one in my family served in the military. Not one. I've got 3 big strapping brothers, didn't serve. Not my dad, not my grandfather, no one. And I'm gonna be the person who's gonna do this book? I mean, if not me, who, right? Who? So I went to work. So let's read it, okay? Next slide. So Rosalie's gonna do it there. I'm gonna do it here because, well, just because. All right, so the book starts with a poem that I did not write. It's called The Sentinel's Creed, and it was left on a sheet of paper outside the Tomb Guard quarters, which are under the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, in 1971, signed only with the name Simon. Simon, a first name, last name, male, female, white, African American, Latino, Asian, gay, straight. Nobody knows. It's perfect. Here's the Sentinel's Creed. Pay attention to the 6th line. I'll put some emphasis on it. My dedication to this sacred duty is total and wholehearted. In the responsibility bestowed on me, never will I falter. And with dignity and perseverance, here's the line, my standard will remain perfection. Through the years of diligence and praise and the discomfort of the elements, I will walk my tour in humble reverence to the best of my ability. It is he who commands the respect I protect. His bravery that made us so proud. Surrounded by well-meaning crowds by day, alone in the thoughtful peace of night, this soldier will in honored glory rest under my eternal vigilance. Next slide. "21 Steps, Guarding the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier," illustrated by Matt Tavares. And I'll talk a bit about Matt when I'm done through. Next slide. I am an unknown. I am one of many. We fell for the last time in the Argonne Forest at Somme, Belleau Wood, face down in trenches, face up on hillsides, we fell 1,000 ways. In life, we were our mother's sons. In death, we are faded photos on the mantle, empty chairs at Thanksgiving, prayers in the dark before dawn. We are known but to God. Next slide. After the war, to end all wars, most of America's fallen came home. Their families could place flowers on their graves and pebbles on their headstones. But combat's vile fury left others nameless and faceless. There was no way for loved ones to claim us, no place for our nation to honor our sacrifice. Next slide. In 1921, one unknown returned to stand for all. I was transported by the Navy to Washington and lay in state in the Capitol, where an army of mourners filed past my casket. Many were families whose sons died, nameless and faceless. As they knelt, prayed, and anointed my flag with tears, I felt their stories. The stories of a Boston kid who swung for the fences, a Texas boy who broke horses, a Choctaw Nation farmhand, a Nevada miner. In that moment, I became theirs. On the 11th day of the 11th month, at the 11th hour, a team of horses bore me to Arlington. Thousands packed the amphitheater. There were speeches, taps, and a 21-gun salute when I was laid to rest. As the day lengthened, those for whom I died lingered and drifted on the roiled waters of loss. I gave them peace. People, though, forget easily. My tomb stands on a hill crest. It did not take long for visitors to come for the view and not the meaning. Some brought picnics, feasting gaily above my bones. Volunteers put a stop to that desecration, but as the plaza emptied in the gloaming, I lay alone with my war. Mustard gas and barbed wire, bayonet charges, and names unanswered at roll call. Late one half-moon night, I heard footsteps. The sharp click of heels. Silence. Another click, more silence. 21 footsteps. Click. 21 seconds of silence. Click. 21 seconds of silence. 21 more steps. With each step, my war was over. Since from that moment, I have never been alone again. No matter the hour or the weather, a sentinel guards the plaza. It is the most difficult post to earn in the Army. Many fail for each one chosen. Those granted the privilege may walk the mat for 2 years. Everything they do honors the unknown fallen. They press their creases, sharp as a razor, rehem their trousers so they lie just right, singe loose threads from their jacket's top stitching, space their medals down to 1/64 of an inch, practice keeping their forearms at 90 degrees, recount pages of cemetery history, set their hat brims 2 fingers above their eyes, dampen their gloves to better grip their rifles, march so their heads stay ever level, add metal to their heels for the sharpest click, polish their spits for hours every day. The tomb guards are men and women of every race, religion, and creed. Before joining the Army, they were students, mechanics, supermarket baggers. They have names, families, and stories. Once on the mat, they are only Americans. Their standard is perfection. My guards were present when more unknowns came home. One from World War II, one from Korea. Then, years later, one from Vietnam. They lay in state in the Capitol, as I did, where an army of mourners filed past the caskets. Many were families whose sons died, nameless and faceless. Mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers knelt, prayed, and anointed the flags with tears. Their stories were different and the same. In time, through the wonder of science, the Vietnam unknown was named and returned to his family. His crypt is now empty. We who remain are never alone. Our guards keep faith. There is admiration in their pants crease, duty in their hems, focus in their top stitching, gratitude between the medals, reverence in the angle of their rifles, discipline in their learning, respect in their hat brims, fidelity in their gloves, appreciation in their step, devotion in their heel clicks, and love in their gleaming spits. I am an unknown. I am one of many. From Bunker Hill to Heartbreak Ridge, we gave all we had for our country and freedom. The Tomb Guards give all they have for us. In glorious sunshine, on bluebird days, the plaza shimmers with life. Crowds gather, aging veterans, tourists, and school groups line the marble steps. They marvel at our sentinels. Then they gaze past the mat to the tomb and imagine our stories. In that moment, we become theirs. In wretched night, when stinging sleet makes daybreak a distant dream, the plaza is desolate. Our guards need no audience in their quest for perfection. As they walk the mat, they listen for our voices on the howling wind. In snow, in rain, on days the birds don't dare to sing, 21, 21, 21. By day, by night, before many, few or none, 21, 21, 21. Guard our perfect rest. Give us now your very best. 21, 21, 21, 21. The end. Thank you. So, like I said, I can't draw. I can't draw a loop. I'm like in the bottom, not the decile, like the centile of artists. Fortunately, Matt Tavares is in the top centile of artists. So there are some very, very remarkable picture book writers who are also illustrators. They write their book, they illustrate it. It's a great gig. You get all the royalties when that happens. You don't have to split them with anybody. And then there's the rest of us. Matt is an author illustrator, by the way. But I knew his work. He did like really, really solid American work, a lot about sports, some of it from the 1920s, 30s, and all that. He's very well known for a set of picture books called Dasher, which is about one of the reindeer at Christmas time. He did another book called about a couple of birds by the Rockefeller Christmas tree. Matt lives in Maine, and when I sold the manuscript to Candlewick, and they told me they had Matt Tavares in mind to do this, I was delighted. They gave him the manuscript. He sent me an email. He was at a soccer game for one of his kids. He read it at halftime, and he said he was crying on the sidelines. And yes, he would do the book. And I'm thrilled. Obviously, he's amazing, right? And I'm doing another book with him, which comes out in autumn of 2026 called Honor Flight, also military in its theme, which is about a volunteer program to bring veterans from World War II, well, there aren't very many left, but World War II, Korea, and from Vietnam, from wherever they live in the country, on flights to Washington, D.C., with Guardians to be there, to see their monuments. I was a Guardian on an honor flight last year. It was incredible. Okay, next slide.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. What's your question, Gary?
Gary, why don't you get the mic?
Okay. Do you get to choose the illustrator, or does the publisher choose it?
All right. So a little inside baseball about book publishing. In my contract, I am allowed to say I have to approve who the illustrator is. That's not my job. My job is whoever the publisher picks to go, that's a great idea, right? This person is fantastic. I could do it. The only time I ever put my foot down with a publisher was, I have another 2026 book on a military theme. It comes in March. It's called We All Serve, and it's about military brats. It's about the special lives of brats. Brats are the kids of people who are active duty in the military. They look like every other kid, in the sanctuary, but their lives are not like every other kid. Their lives are like completely different. You can't tell who they are by looking, but their parents may be deployed. Mom can't read you a bedtime story. You may have to delay your Passover Seder because your parent can't be there. God forbid you may have a parent who comes home with PTSD. You move all the time. Friendships are attenuated and abbreviated. Their lives are not the same. And I really, really, really wanted a military brat illustrator, like someone who has lived that, to do it. And the first person that my publisher proposed was not a brat. I was like, we really need a brat. And I went out, they were like, how do we find one? I found one. There's a woman named Tamika Grooms, African-American in Atlanta, military brat. She's illustrating the book. She's killing it. She's going to just do great. Okay. The art for this was so good for 21 Steps that the Veterans Administration decided to take a version of Matt's cover and make it the official cover of the program for Veterans Day in 2021, which was also the 100th anniversary of the tomb. So everybody who came to Washington and got a program associated with the tomb got this cover. It's fantastic. Okay, next slide. All right, so this is a little support for like what changed with me, right? So I was part of the National Lawyers Guild, and they're like anti-capitalist, anti-racist, anti-fascist, anti-imperialist. I raised my hand at like my first law school meeting. I'm like, I know what you're against. What are you for? Didn't get a good answer. I wasn't part of that organization for very long. Next slide. Yeah. What it's like for me to write books like these in 2023, 2024, in a world of children's literature that is not like the books that you grew up with. So there's a lot of great stuff going on in Kidlit right now. I would say that the kids today, they are kinder than I ever was. They are more compassionate than I ever was. They have certainly much more tolerance for their peers and for differences than I did, and that's really important, right? You have to be kind to people. You need to be compassionate when someone is suffering. We're a big country. If we're not going to be tolerant of one another, we're never going to survive. However, kindness and compassion and tolerance are not the only values that kids should get. Next slide. Yeah, so, you're also getting stuff in Kidlit today, like A is for activists, and Bye Bye Binary, and We Are Water Protectors, which is about the attempt to block the Keystone Pipeline going through certain land. This is children's books. No, I better protest. I mean, these are also important values. Dissent is an important value. But so are respect and fidelity and service and responsibility and goodness. I personally think a lot of this stuff can wait until 5th grade. And let's get some other core values there first. So I'm writing those kinds of books. Next slide. All right. Tomb Guard values that don't show up in many children's books these days. Sacrifice, duty, obedience, exactitude, service, loyalty, determination, devotion, reverence, patriotism, awareness, precision, and self-effacement. These are the things I like to write about. So this is my last book. This came out in 2023. It's called Food for Hope, and it's basically about how food banks got started. And it's like one Meshuggah guy, who Roman Catholic, who went from like he was the head of sales at Archer Sportswear, circa 1964-65, handsome, married a model, 2 kids, they owned a house in Ventura, and all that, and then his life fell apart. And he ended up on a soup line in Phoenix, Arizona in 1966. Homeless. And with his fall, he found humility, and he reconnected with his Roman Catholic faith, and he started cooking in the same mission where he was eating, and he got the idea that, there's grapefruit vineyards east of Phoenix. You can go out there, maybe we can gather the grapefruit that's on the ground and give it to people so they can have some fruit in the mission. And he gathered so much that they had extra, and he started giving it to other giving it to other soup kitchens. And then he met a woman who told him that she was unemployed, she had 6 kids, but they were eating like kings for free. And John Van Hengel's like, that's not possible. She took him by the arm, took him behind a supermarket, pointed in the dumpster, and the dumpster's like filled with food. That's fine, right? Some crushed spaghetti boxes, there's dented cans back there, but everything is fine. And he gets this idea like, you know what? And the woman's like, I would just wish I could put this stuff in a bank for when I needed it. And Van Hengel goes back to his church friars and is like, we need a food bank. And the friars are like, that's a great idea, John, you do it. And they gave him an abandoned bakery that someone had willed him down on Skid Row in Phoenix, Arizona. And first year, he was like, okay, we're going to do this. And first year, they gathered 250,000 pounds of food at the St. Mary's Food Bank. I visited the St. Mary's Food Bank last year to talk about this book, which just won an award from the Christophers. And the St. Mary's Food Bank in Phoenix right now, they do 125 million pounds of food a year. They got 200 full-time employees, and they are not the biggest food bank in America, not by a long shot. And Van Hengel took the food bank movement worldwide, and he never took a dime for it. He sacrificed his life in favor of helping people out of service and gratitude and appreciation and determination. These are the books I like. These are the things I like to write about. These are the things I care about. So I'm writing them. Here's what's good for me. Not many other people are. I'm just doing my thing. And I try to find interesting subjects to write about and tell my stories in a way that's going to be compelling. Next slide. What time do we have? So, you know what? Let me wrap here, okay? In case you've got questions, and if you don't have questions, I can make up some of my own. So one of the most common questions I get about this book is like, why 21? Why 21? Where did 21 come from? Because with 21 gun salute, right, it's reserved for, at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, President of the United States, and when a foreign head of state comes to America, there's a 21 gun salute. Here's the story. I can't vouch for it. I wasn't there. But it has the ring of truth. Middle Ages, time of Christopher Columbus, even before, when you were in a port and you saw a warship on the horizon, that was not a good thing, right? Yeah, it could be the British Navy coming. It could be the French. It could be whomever. So a custom developed that went like this. If a warship was coming in peace, when it got within earshot of the shore, it would fire 7 cannon blasts out to sea. And then the shore batteries, because there were always more shore batteries, they fired 21 blanks in return. 21 went out. Everybody knew that everything was going to happen in peace. Wasn't a situation of wartime, and the number 21 got associated with peace and honor. That allegedly is where it came from. And now I'll take your questions. I know a lot about the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I know a lot about the Tomb Guards. I've been down in Tomb Guard quarters. I did a program for the National Archive on Veterans Day in 2021 with the then, she had just retired as Sergeant of the Guard, Chelsea Porterfield. There have been probably 8 or 10 women who have served as Tomb Guards. Chelsea was in charge down there. And Chelsea's like about yay big with like super short hair and she's got tattoos and she's just like amazing. And it was so cool to be down there and hear Chelsea give an order and watch 6 huge Tomb Guards like rush to fulfill it. Yeah, it's quite a thing. Yes, hold it. Let's get you a mic, okay? Check the test. Good.
What are spits?
What do you think? Yeah. So spits are the Tomb Guard slang term for your boots, okay, for your shoes. Why? Because you would spit polish them. And when I say that they shine them for hours every day, I don't mean an hour and a half. I don't mean 2 hours. I mean, they're shining their shoes between 4 and 6 hours a day. And the shoes aren't conventional. The shoes come, they take the heels off them, they put a lower heel on them so that when they do their walk across, you'll go look at some video of it, the heads don't go up and down, right? It's much more level. And then they'll attach metal to heels and inside for the click. Yes?
Aren't the guards, the ones that guard the tomb, all supposed to be exactly 6 feet tall?
Not so much anymore. What they do now, first of all, it's impossible to become a guard. And we'll talk a little about the process in a sec. But what they will do is they need to be between 5'8" and 6'4". They need to fit the uniform. So they don't have chubby guards, they don't have super skinny guards. But they'll put like 2 people out there who are 5'8", and 2 people out on a guard change who are 6 feet. So everything looks sort of even. Yeah. How impossible is it to become a tomb guard? Like, you can't just raise your hand as an enlisted person and say, I want to do this. First of all, you have to qualify for and be part of the Army's they're all enlisted people, by the way, no officers. You have to qualify for and be part of the Army's 3rd Regiment, which is the ceremonial unit. This is the unit that does burials at Arlington. When a foreign leader comes to America, they're the ones, they set up the honor guard, all the ceremonial stuff, 3rd Regiment does. Then you have to test to become a guard. It's impossible. There have been less than 700 since 1937. Here's how hard it is. Your first test, remember when I said they memorize, they recite pages of cemetery history? It's not 4 pages of bullet points. It's about I think it's 21 pages of cemetery history, single-spaced, which the guard must memorize and recite, including the punctuation, commas, periods, semicolons, paragraph breaks. And I think you're allowed 5 mistakes the first time you do it, and then 3 mistakes when you get tested again. They're tested on everything. They're tested on their uniform. They're tested on how they walk. They're tested on their guard changes that they do. They have to learn how to do the guard changes silently, just with heel clicks, because down below there might be a funeral underway. So they don't want orders to be issued up, loud voice up on the hill. They are tested down to their spacing of their medals. It's just impossible. And they can do it if they're selected, they can do it for up to 2 years. So I asked one guard, no, go ahead, your question's better than mine. Yeah. Can you reach?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, so when I went to Arlington, there was no book like this for my kids. Is a book available at the cemetery?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, it's in the cemetery bookstore. So obviously, do we need to break?
I have a question too, but I also have an
So let's take the question and the announcement, and then I'll wrap.
The guard came in, some of you noticed, that there's a white Tesla in the parking lot that is in an illegal parking place. And I said, this isn't quite a Tesla crowd, but I will make the announcement. Do you want the license or if? 9 AOB 234. Okay, we have a Tesla. All right, what I would love for you to say briefly is about 3 steps behind. Yes, I just read it to my neighbors, and I think it's phenomenal.
Thank you so much. That's kind. All right. So the book that Susie's talking about was my first picture book was called The Tree in the Courtyard. It's basically Anne Frank's story from the perspective of the horse chestnut tree that grew behind the secret annex. And it was my first attempt at a picture book. Been pretty successful. It's been translated into 7 or 8 different languages and continues to be in print and read. My second one, so as I was finishing The Tree in the Courtyard, I read an obituary in the New York Times. It was January 3rd, 2012, of a woman named Beate Sirota Gordon, who had just died of pancreatic cancer at age 87. And this is the craziest story I ever heard in my life. And by the time I got to the end of the obituary, I'm like, you know what? I'm writing this. To make a interesting story very short, Beate Sirota Gordon was born in Austria to a very famous concert pianist. When the economy collapsed in Europe, her father, Leo Sirota, moved the family to Japan for what was going to be 6 months so he could teach and concertize there. Ended up staying there. And the girl, Beate, grew up in Japan and learned absolutely perfect Japanese. Like fluent, perfect, was part of Japanese culture, had Japanese friends, came to love Japan and came to hate the misogyny that was endemic in that country pre-war. Came time for her to go to college. She couldn't go back to Europe, obviously. It's 1939. She's not going to get educated in Europe. Her parents sent her to and they wouldn't take women in Japanese colleges and universities then. So her parents sent her to the closest school that would take her, Mills College in Oakland, California. And she went to Mills, and things are great there. Some of you, good education until December 7, 1941, when Pearl Harbor happens. Communications are cut off with Japan completely. Totally. And Beate is stuck in America, no money, no nothing, and at Mills. And Mills gave her a scholarship to continue her studies. And Beate, who I think is 19 at this time, she goes to work for the War Department in San Francisco, listening to radio broadcasts on Radio Tokyo, because we had nobody else to do translations because we put all our Japanese speakers in internment camps. And Beate worked and went to school through the war. She's on the radio when Tokyo is firebombed. She figures her parents are gone. Right? It's logical. We lost 140,000 people that night. The war ends. Japan's still closed. Beate goes to Washington, talks her way into a gig with MacArthur and the occupation forces, goes back to Japan. She's 22, finds her parents, who were 6 hours outside of Tokyo and turned in the mountains. And then MacArthur puts her to work as a native Japanese speaker on the committee drafting the post-war Japanese Constitution. And Beate Gordon is personally responsible for the women's rights clauses and the family protection clauses in the post-war Constitution. She brings them to her commanding officer, Colonel Cadies, before the final meeting with the Japanese. And Cadies is like, Ms. Sirota, this is impossible. You're giving more women more rights here than in the American Constitution. Beate goes like, that's not very hard to do. Women aren't in the American Constitution. And then to close it out, she came back to America. She married a Jewish guy, had children in New York, went to work for the Japan Center, and then the Asia Society. And the story was a military secret for like 45 years because the Japanese didn't want their people to know that it was essentially an American who had put these clauses that are now so popular in Japan in their constitution. And America didn't want the Japanese to know that they were responsible for it either. The story broke in the mid-1990s. She went back to Japan on a visit, and she's like, hero, mobbed in the streets. Story had been out there for a long time, just like 21 Steps, right, since 1921 for this. This guy did the food banks in 1967. He started it. Beate Gordon did this in 1946. No one wrote about it. Only me. Thank you. Yeah.
First of all, I want to say your book is like poetry.
Thank you so much.
Second of all, I have a question aside from everything. How did they decide? How do you decide what grade, what child you're writing for? I mean, how do they figure who should, a 7-year-old should read this book or a 9-year-old should read that book?
I can only speak for. So, all right, so the question is, how do you decide what book matches with which kid at what age? How do publishers do it? And how does an author like me do it? I can only speak for myself, okay? And then I'll say a couple of words about publishers and where I think they've gone wrong and where I think they've gone right. For me, is the story going to resonate? For whom is it too sophisticated? And can I tell it in a way that's going to work for my intended age group, which is always typically it's grades 3 and up. Sometimes 2 and up. My book, The Christmas Mitzvah, that could drop down to kindergarten. There's no problem with that. But Food for Hope, I would say 2nd and up. This book, 3rd and up. And that's just me. And I'm hoping that I can make my books work from 3rd grade through MID day. You know, they're my audience. You know, it's like not just kids, obviously. For publishers, I get myself in trouble for what I'm about to say, but I think that there are a lot of adults who are now trying to work out their politics and their traumas and whatever on children. and it's not necessarily such a great thing to fire A is for activist at a first grader. Probably can wait till fifth grade. You know, I mean, I was pretty interested in politics too, but better to get a grounding in the values that matter, and then we can introduce that other, you don't study Talmud until you understand Torah, right? And some of these ideas that they're hitting first and second graders with are just stuff that parents understand better and should probably have the first shot at their own kids with. And I trust parents to make buying decisions with my books. I have found these books work for my intended age group. I mean, my next book comes in 2025. It's called Strike for the Right to Read. It's about the 1939 sit-in and court test case trying to integrate the Alexandria, Virginia new public library. This is 15 years before Rosa Parks. Organized by a 26-year-old black lawyer, enlisting young black men between the ages of 16 and 23 to do this sit-in. Nobody knows this story. I know this story will work for third graders. It's going to be fine with them. So that doesn't mean you have to do no politics at all. But what are the values that you're trying to place forward? Integrated libraries seems to me like a very good value. Yes?
I'm just wondering if you talk to schools, do they invite you to come and talk where you have adults or parents with the children there and they can have a dialogue after this?
Yes, and I speak in schools a lot. I like to do it, and the response is always good. Poor, rich, medium, black, white, inner city, Soddy Daisy, Tennessee, Red Boiling Springs, Tennessee, Salt Lake, doesn't matter where. The response, kids get it. They get it, they know. They get it. They understand why this is important. The only thing that it says, it's like, why didn't anybody tell me about this? Why are we talking about this in class? You know, why? I have no answers. All I can do is do my work and try to do it well. So I brought, I don't know, 8 or 10 copies of 21 Steps, which I'm happy to sign and sell to you for the princely sum of $20, and I have some copies of Food for Hope as well. Thank you so much for inviting me, okay? I loved it.
Thank you, Jeff. I hope to bring you back and maybe after you publish your
Well,
next
we
book.
got a few books coming.
I
so.
know. Thank you so much.
Thank
This
you.
is wonderful. I'm glad we were able to hook you up, too.
We got the tech working. Great. So all I need is a pen, and then I can do this, because that's the one thing I forgot, right?
Buy the book and give it to a school or something?
Yeah, why not?
I mean, what, do you have a mechanism to do that, or just go to the school, or?
Yeah, just bring it to them, right?
Okay.
Just bring
All
them.
right.
Just bring them the book. Thank you.
I have a quick question for you.
Thank you. Should I sign it to you, Anna, or?
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you can learn to draw. No, seriously. I could not draw anything till I was in my mid-60s, and I took lessons at Mission Renaissance. They can teach anyone to draw. And not only draw, be a competent artist. You'll never be this kind of competence, but you can overcome this. I'll never be able to draw, and actually, I have art in public places.
So here's the thing. I'm a really good skier. I started skiing when I was like 8 years old. I lived in Utah. I'm like really, really good. I got it in my head that I should learn how to snowboard. And one winter, I took snowboard lessons, and I got from like here to here on my snowboard, you know, but then I realized like I could go from, but my skiing was here, I put the snowboard away.
Well, I have stuff
No, I
in
hear ya.
public spaces and
Good for you.
yeah, you can.
Good for you. So for you, Bridget? Okay. So,
I'll give it to a school.
okay, I'm just gonna sign it.
Okay.
Okay?
Great, yeah. That's the one I just asked. Three steps behind.
No steps behind. No steps.
No steps.
No steps behind. Thank you.
Are you equipped to take credit card?
No, but I can take Venmo, I can take whatever. You know what? I'm gonna give this to you, Ziza. You're gonna bring me an envelope in shul, okay? And you'll just hand it. And you just bring it to me in shul. You bring me an envelope. You can hand an envelope off on Shabbat, right? Is that kosher? If it's done before? I trust you. Don't be silly. No, silly. I'll see you. Huh. Well, thank you so much.
By the way,
Yes.
congrats on your career and especially this book.
Thank you so much.
I'm a veteran.
I know you are, of course. Of course, of course. Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, you can dedicate.
Good, Rosalie. Delighted.
Is it cash only?
It could be, a check is fine. Yeah.
You have a checkbook?
I just want to know what street you live on in Teaneck.
Fine.
Jeff talked to us about his books.
All right. Tell me how you know Teaneck.
I grew up there.
Did you? So I went to Whittier School, and so school number 4. I grew up on Cottage Place, which is in the extreme northwest corner, near where New Milford and River Edge come together, on the far side of River Road. Actually, where were you?
I was on the opposite side and founded Pagoda
You
in
got it.
Richfield
Oh
Park.
yeah. Right.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I know exactly where you
No,
are.
no one throws some money on the table when I'm teaching.
Oh, no, you do it for free.
Do you have any brothers that graduated
Don't work it.
65?
No, my brothers are all young. We're all younger than me. What? You part of the synagogue then? Which one? No, what
Oh,
synagogue
then.
in Teaneck?
Not in Teaneck.
Not in Teaneck.
Richfield Park.
Richfield Park, right. Yep. It was a great place. It was a great place to grow up. Great place to grow up. In my humble opinion.
Yeah.
Right. Got my 50th high school reunion this coming September. God help
Been
me.
there, done
Right.
that. So many of them.
So you're going to tell me how to say this.
SONNIER. Two
Yeah,
N's.
got it. Sure.
Two N's.
Who are the Soniers?
They're my neighbors behind. There are 4
Fabulous.
children. There are 4 children. They belong here.
Yeah.
The kids the 2 older ones started coming to my house in 2020.
Yes.
And now the 2 younger ones are starting to come.
That's wonderful.
And same
Okay.
description.
Fabulous.
And it's been the most incredible thing for both sides.
You
And
guys let me know when you're done with the famous author here.
Right.
And I just read The No Steps Behind to the little girl who's
Yes.
8.
Yes.
And then her older brother.
It's an incredible story.
Oh,
right?
I mean, and nobody knows. Nobody knows. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
When they brought in the other soldiers from the other wars,
Yes.
they aren't buried there, are they?
They are. So,
They are?
so you go to Arlington. So there's the tomb,
Yeah.
and then there's 3 crypts
Oh, okay.
in front. Okay.
Yes,
So World War II,
Oh, okay.
Korea, Vietnam. They disinterred the Vietnam unknown in maybe early 2000s, and that crypt's empty, and it's going to stay empty. And there'll never be another unknown soldier, right? Because of all the DNA. Now they can always do an
So
identification.
they're all buried by the tomb.
Yeah, they're all buried right there. Yeah.
My question is,
Yeah.
how hard are they trying to identify soldiers that are already buried?
They're still working. They're actually still trying to find missing soldiers going all the way back to World War I. Yeah, I had a long, interesting conversation with a Marine officer who had just led a group back to Korea in search of Marines. They knew where the battle was. There were people who would have been lost. Yeah, they care.
Thank
They really
you
care.
so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Good, thank you. Bring me back. 2026, we've got more to talk about.
God willing, we'll be here. The crowd was a little small.
It's fun. Everything is fun. It's fun. It's an honor to do this.
Okay, I want to tell you, one of the comments on the streaming was so impressive.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
And I answered, I agree.
Thank you. I really, look, it's weird. It's funny for me because, like, for Beth and me, like, Beth's a psychologist. She's actually basically pretty introverted. She spends all day talking to people. And then there's me. I'm actually pretty extroverted. I like people, and I spend all my time like just like.
I just have a question.
Yes.
How long do they actually, are they working, guarding it, and how many shifts do they?
So it's 24-hour shifts. They've got sleeping quarters there. And
they're not working
there's, I think,
24
eight
hours.
people in a relief in a crew.
That's what I mean, it's like
And
day to
I
day.
think there's 6 or 8 in their crew.
Just
And
walking.
they'll walk on the mat. So it's an hour at a time
Yeah.
in winter and autumn, half hour in summer. It's just blazing hot out there.
And
Their
they're freezing cold.
Yeah, then their uniforms are wool. It's easier in winter.
So they work about an hour and then
They'll work an hour, they'll come back in, but it depends on how often they will have to. They're pretty tough, man. They're pretty tough. They tell me they really like bad weather.
Get their 10,000 steps in a day.
Easy, easy, right?
Well, thank you.
Easy. Thank you so much. Okay.
I'm not so sure I can. All right, I'm working on it.
Right.
I actually had a good response from on my latest draft.
What's that? Huh?
That thing I was working on.
Oh, good.
I kept working on it.
Good,
working
good,
on
good.
it, And so Herman House responds, it's not ready yet, but here's
Oh,
a few
really?
things to consider.
Oh, good, good,
And
good.
They gave me, so I
Good.
just actually just sent it in.
Who's the attorney? Do you know? Yeah, good. Great.
But it was like, this is what I think could be, is hard for me about it. And I was like, great. I can do
Excellent.
that. Right.
Good. Bravo.
Bravo. Anyway, how are you?
I am well. Yeah, I am doing A-okay. And you? Okay? Yeah. I am all right. Fighting the good fight. Right? Every minute of every day, it feels like.
Okay. All right, folks, I'm passing out prayer books, so I can give you some religion after.
Thank you.
Maybe you can check here to see if
What? You want to make sure you're out?
I mean, Jeff has all this fancy computer stuff. I'm going back to the prayers.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, look, it's my, here, it's my son's video. This is my son's video presentation. Wait, you're signing it? Okay, that's fine.
Good.
You're good.
Okay.
Just leave it.
All right, onward. Thank you, everyone.
So, so, there you go. Okay, so, oi, all right, that's fine. First of all, I hope everyone had a good Pesach, despite everything. So, what I thought we could do, I just want a few words, public service announcements. Many of you are asking me about college campuses and what's going on with college campuses. I don't know if I think it's going to go out this week. On May 28th, which I think is a Tuesday night. Is that right? Yeah. We're having Dr. Morton Shapiro speak here. Dr. Shapiro is the president emeritus of Northwestern University, and he's a congregant here. And so he is going to speak about the situation on campus. Now, not reading anyone's age, the target obviously for this are parents who are thinking about, like my contemporaries who are thinking about their kids and should we send these kids to these colleges, what should we do? But everyone is welcome, and so you're not excluded. I guess I will say this there, that if you do come, during the Q&A, let's defer to the parents who are thinking about that first before we, but everyone is certainly welcome, and you don't have to be an ADOT member to come. We want everyone to be able to hear, and we'll be doing another presentation with another guest before the summer. So just know that we're thinking about these things, and I had to go to UCLA right before the police were called in and everything happened, and I brought my son, my youngest son actually, with me, and I said, I want to show you this. Like, I think this is important for you to see, and it's just very sad where the world is right now. So, okay. What I'd like to do with this time is to study a particular section of Talmud, which is traditional at this time. We're in the middle of the Omer. Can someone remind me what the Omer is? The period between Passover, I'm going to repeat it just so everyone hears, between Passover and Shavuot, and it's 49 days, 7 complete weeks. And anything else, Lon? Right. The counting of the Omer. Right. Excellent. Good. So it's a period of counting. Some people look at it as a solemn period because it's during this period that Rabbi Akiva, the great Rabbi Akiva's students, suffered through a plague. The plague receded on Lag BaOmer, which is the 33rd day of the Omer. And so there are some practices that some people don't get married during the Omer. Some people only get married on Rosh Chodesh. Today, actually, is Rosh Chodesh. And so there's different practices around that, but there's definitely a time of spiritual improvement. Sissel, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just want to say the origin of the Omer was bringing to the temple contributions at certain times.
Right. An Omer is actually, thank you for mentioning that, counting the Omer, if people who lived during the Second Temple or First Temple times saw what we were doing and counting the Omer, they wouldn't understand they'd think we were nuts. I mean, we are nuts, but for other reasons. Because the Omer is a measure of produce that was brought as the first offering, right? I think it's like about like a 2 liters or so of, that could be wrong, but so it's a measure, and people would bring it as, again, we are in spring and harvest, and your harvest is beginning. And so that's when most things in Judaism, what's interesting is that most things in Judaism, if you think about the genius of Judaism, have agricultural roots. And then when we became a diasporic people, we made it portable. I mean, if you think about the genius of Judaism, that we took all of our practices, holidays, much of which was tied directly into agriculture and our place in the land, and we portabilized and took the whole show on the road for 2,000 years. And maybe we were almost too effective. I mean, I want to be provocative. Like, we were too effective at that because the rest of the world now seems to think that we were very comfortable being outside of the land, and that's what we should be for the rest of our existence. Right? The rest of the world says, oh, wait a second, Judaism, no, you guys, you do really well when you're, go back to Poland. We've always maintained, I mean, the stupidity in calling us, I'll just go off on a little diatribe. The stupidity of calling us a colonizing people for a land that we've been attached to for over 3,000 years. That doesn't disqualify us seeing other people in that land, but to call us sort of, what is it that when you call carpetbaggers? Like when a politician moves. Like to suggest that Zionism is carpetbagging is offensive, and also just a misunderstanding of history. That when we gathered at Pesach, and I was just speaking to Sue about what our Pesach was like, for 2,000 years, we said next year in Jerusalem. So how are we colonizers? But anyway, that's all I want to talk about today. I was talking about this actually with the parents. I do a preschool parent class in the mornings on Wednesdays after Minyan. We need to reclaim the term Zionist. There's this school of thought that Zionism for these young college kids, many of your grandchildren, that Zionism is like it's like a curse word. It's ridiculous. Zionism doesn't mean, and Nadia, I'll get to you in a second, that you can be a Zionist who sees Palestinians and recognizes me being a Zionist doesn't make me immune to the pain, the real pain and suffering that is occurring in the Gaza Strip. We're not. Of course, I think Hamas has inflated the numbers, and they've blown up their own people, and they've suppressed their own people, and these people voted for them. I think we should remember that. But nevertheless, despite them voting for these people, despite that I still don't wish them ill. In fact, I wish them well. I don't want to see Gazan children suffering or Gazan people. Like, you see the looks, they've been relocating, and it's terrible. And that is the reality of war, especially when your government is a terrorist entity. And a democratically elected, terrorist entity, I may add. Of course, they've overstayed their term, and I would hope that they would be defeated in an election now, but who knows? Anyway, I'm going off. Nadia, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to say that the negative term of Zionism came from Soviet propaganda in 1950s or maybe before that. When after the Holocaust, they just couldn't say Jews are bad.
Right.
So they started using the term Zionists are bad.
Yeah.
These are the enemies. And I
Yeah.
don't understand how today it can still take hold of.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because in the early kibbutz movement had a spiritual crisis because before the initial Labor Party was formed, the antecedent to that was Mapai, which was like Mifleget Poale, anyway, like the Workers' Party, and then there was one to the right, to the left of that, which was Mapam, and that was like basically, Marxist Soviet left, right, and they were very much in favor of Israel aligning itself with the Soviet Union because they were hoping that it would become that Israel would become communist. And then when the communists in the USSR started talking about, then there was a spiritual crisis from the far left in Israel about, wait a second, we picked the wrong team, right? Like there was they were able to move one more over to the right without going, they never became capitalists, that's for sure. So instead of communists, they became socialists. But there was a spiritual crisis because, they were raised on this idea of communism, and they were hoping that Israel would become a communist society. Yeah, is this all? Go ahead. Sure.
In fact, in the early, during the 40s, and especially the very, very beginning of 48, there was a big debate in Israel about whether to join the United States side or the Russian side. And Mapam was the communist voice, and there was the centrist, and there was also the rightist. And locally, the centrists and the rightists won over the communists. Yeah. A big debate in Israel.
Yeah. Speaking about all of this, give another advertisement from another one of my classes, and then maybe I'll get to what I wanted to talk to you about. I do this seminar called Reading with the Rabbi, and we pick a book. Lana's been there, a few others have been there, but we pick a book, and we discuss the book. So the book that I picked for that's coming up is the book 1948, which is by the historian Benny Morris. Now, you could read the book beforehand, or you don't have to. And then you could just come and you'll get a flavor for the book while you're there at the class. So I'll bring excerpts and things like that. But for those of you who are interested, and I think it's important for us to understand the birth of Israel, to understand, because this is a conflict that's not, we were mistaken. We thought this was a conflict about 1967 and what happened after 1967, and it's not. It's a when we first got off the boat from Russia in the beginning, the late 19th century, that's where this began, and that's where this is what this is a conflict of. They tell us what it's a conflict about. Go back to Poland. So, oy vey. All right. Okay. So how do we? My Israeli friends tell me that Americans always want They don't like the Hollywood movies because they always have a happy ending. If you watch Israeli cinema, like basically, how does an American movie, it always ends like nice, right? Happily ever after. Israeli movie, everyone dies. That's how Israeli movies end. Like you walk out there, you're like, oh. And I used to complain about that because I don't go to the movies to feel awful. But, my Israeli friends would be like, Brian, that's life. Like, why do you Americans want to sugarcoat everything? Be real. So I wish there was a way of me sugarcoating this, but there's not. It's life. So it's like an Israeli, and God willing, we won't. Well, we're not going to die. I mean, we're all going to die, but we're not going to die because that's what Hamas doesn't understand. And that's what these stupid kids, not even the stupid kids don't understand anything. But the ones who are just suggesting that we're colonizers, this is the mistake that they're making. The mistake that they're making is that we could just as easily go back to Poland, and that's an acceptable solution for us. But they don't realize that's not. This is it. This is the last stop on the train. So when they suggest, oh, you're colonizers, like the French could leave, the British could leave. Before that, the Ottomans could leave. People could leave the Middle East, go someplace else, but we don't have any place else to go. So that's the mistake of Hamas. They think that if they rewrite get rid of the occupier, get rid of the colonizer, a colonizer makes a colony. We were the 13 colonies, and then when we became a pain in the neck, too much of a pain in the neck, that's when the Revolutionary War ended because it was not worth the fight anymore. And then they went home. But there's no place else for us to go. And I think that's a critical mistake that that Hamas or anti-Zionists don't understand. That as much as they feel that they are fighting for their homeland, and that does resonate with me. Hold on for a second, Zissel. It does, and maybe I've been sounding very right wing, so I'm going to sound a little left wing now. But I understand the Palestinian desire to return. I do. I mean, we kept that desire alive for 2,000 years. And I do believe they think of it as their home. I understand that. And so that's where a pragmatic solution needs to be, and I don't think it's around the corner. I don't think anyone who thinks that this is just going to be over, we'll make peace and we'll have a Rose Garden celebration and we'll, have peace. That doesn't work. But I do understand their desire for return, but I think that they don't understand that for us, this is home too. And I don't think they fully understand that. And I think that may be our secret weapon. Yeah, Zissel. And then maybe I'll even get to the thing that I know something about, which is the Talmud.
There is a saying in Spanish, no hay peor ciego que el que no quiere ver. Meaning in English, there isn't a worse blind person than the person who does not want to see. Hamas understands. It's not understanding, Rabbi. Hamas doesn't want to see. It's against their political aim. It's a difference between understanding and not wanting.
No, I think you're right. And even anti-Hamas. Oh, gosh, sure. Why not? We're all giving our political diatribes today. Come on.
I think it's important when you hear the word that we're the colonizers.
Yeah.
We have to tell people we are the indigenous people. We never fully left.
That's right.
We had a continuous presence. It's like, are the Europeans the indigenous people of America? No, the Native Americans are. We are the indigenous people of that land.
I agree. Right, and if anything, we should call them the Johnny Come Latelys. But I'm not interested in getting into that with them, right? Like, so I've been telling a lot of you, I just finished reading that book by Rashid Khaldi, The 100 Years War on Palestine. And boy, well, that wasn't good for my blood pressure. But I'm not interested in like undermining his claim of Palestinian identity. I do think there are places where he and others overshoot, like that there was a strong Palestinian identity. But at a certain point, there is a Palestinian identity. They are now a people, right? Like, how? So, but I don't need to say like my claim is greater than your claim. Like, I mean, I don't feel like we're gonna get that's not conducive ultimately to a solution. And I feel like we got there in the 1990s to say like, okay, both of us have a claim, so let's just like figure. It's like when your kids fight, you're like, okay, you both have a point. I wasn't in the room when this started. Let's just end this and like move on with life. I do agree with you. Like, we are, we can see you, can you see us? That's what you were saying about the seeing, or how, anyway, what do you say? That's right, right. No, I think that's a good point. Lana's point is, and you see these college kids, this organization, which I mean, the Jewish Voices for Peace. It's more of like the Jewish Voices for Stupidity. I don't understand. I'm sorry, like if any of your grandkids are involved in that, but I think it's unconsciously self-hating. And I think that people don't realize when they say, oh, no, I'm not anti-Semitic. I just believe that you should forfeit your right to self-determination and sovereignty. But I'm not anti-Semitic. I love Jews. And you should just go back being a people of the diaspora. Rabbinic Judaism was like the lifeline of the diaspora, but it wasn't it wasn't like the priority of Judaism. I mean, from the very beginning, the promise to Abraham is Lech Lecha, right? There is to separate Jewish identity from the land is just not a credible presentation of Judaism. We were able to survive despite not being in the land, even though we were kind of like, we had some people there, loose attachment, always an eye on it. But that's one of the real great miracles. I mean, that's, what's his face? The Dalai Lama became interested in Judaism because he wanted to understand how to survive when you're kicked out of your homeland. And maybe we did a little too well, surviving. And so that people then say, "Oh, you don't need to go home. Like my kid does so well at camp. Oh, keep him. I don't want him home." But we, it's our success in diaspora does not in any way undermine our claim to being a people with a connection to this particular land. But a few months ago, I think I was telling this group. They're just having this archaeological debate about this wall in the old city of Jerusalem and when it's from. And, I'm not sure if I was right at the time. I'm telling you, this is a wall that was built because the prophet Isaiah was whispering to King Hezekiah that it was time to build some walls. And that's, almost 3,000 years ago. Why we shouldn't throw that out? Like, we're indigenous. And if you're family was been here since the 14th century before the Ottoman Empire. Gesundheit, like, okay, like, I'm okay with that too. I'll call you indigenous as well. Like, my indigenousness doesn't need to be stronger than your indigenousness, if that's a word, but please, like, don't call me a colonizer. Oy. All right. So, Pirkei Avot. Oh, look, we're almost out of time. Pirkei Avot is, oh wait, why are we saying Pirkei Avot? I'm doing a terrible job this class. I'm all over the place. There's not one tight synthesis, and it's just me like blowing off steam because I'm very angry. But we study Pirkei Avot. Does anyone know why we study Pirkei Avot during the Omer? So the Omer is that time between Pesach and Shavuot, as Lana said so eloquently. And if you think about it, it's a time that we move from national liberation to, and it's political to like personal fulfillment with the Ten Commandments. And so it becomes from like a political thing, you know, liberation, to a revelation from God. And so Pirkei Avot is a set of ethical teachings that kind of help us refine our character. So as we're counting the Omer, and what are we on, day 16? Yeah, what day? 15. As we're counting the Omer, we're supposed to be thinking about how we can refine our personal characteristics. So people study Pirkei Avot traditionally. It also works well mathematically. There are 49 days of the Omer, meaning 7 complete weeks. So that means there are 6 Shabbatot of the Omer. And there are 6 chapters in Pirkei Avot. And so you study a chapter every Shabbos afternoon leading up to Shavuot. Okay, so there's a nice. So I thought we'd study some Pirkei Avot together. The first chapter, and I did it a little bit more historically. I think we did together 2 years ago when we studied part of the last chapter. So I thought we would do is just study some Pirkei Avot, but not begin with the first chapter, which I already went over. Or maybe we were on Zoom when we did this. I did it for this group. So let's start with the second chapter of Pirkei Avot, and you can really start anywhere. I'm on page 238. It's in the Siddur again because on Shabbat afternoon you study it. 238. Is this little? They didn't give you a book? Oh, okay. Okay. So let's read. Does anybody want to read chapter 2? Let's see if we could do at least one Mishnah, and then we'll call it a day. Okay. Oh, yeah. Let's give it a microphone. But first, make a pro-Zionist statement. I'm just not saying.
You want to say something first?
Go ahead.
Okay. Rabbi Judah the Patriarch taught, which is the path of virtue that a person should follow? That which brings honor to one's maker as well as respect for one's fellow human beings. Be as attentive to a minor mitzvah as to a major one, for you do not know the reward for each of the mitzvot. Weigh the loss incurred in performing a mitzvah against the gain. Conversely, weigh the gain of a transgression against the loss. Ponder 3 things, and you will avoid committing a transgression. Keep in mind what is above you, an eye that sees, an ear that hears, and a book in which all your deeds are recorded.
Okay, we're going to go piece by piece with this Mishnah, but any general observations about this mitzvah? What's the theology behind this mitzvah? Yeah, okay, good. And how do you do that? Like, how do you do that? Oh, how do you create a path of virtue? performing mitzvot and avoiding transgression. Do the positive mitzvahs, avoid the negative mitzvahs. And then keep in mind that, as the 80s song, Private Eyes Are Watching You. You don't know that song? I don't know what the next word is, but thank you. But there's this idea in this Mishnah that you're being watched. The theology here is like the God of the Excel spreadsheet. That there is a system of accounting that's going up. And that God, this, by the way, this is not my theology. But Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, that's Yehuda the Patriarch, this is what he is teaching. That God is taking account of every one of our actions. And there's a scorecard. Right? It's like playing Mahjong. Right? I don't even know how to play, but there's hands and there's things and there's more points, less points, and right, tiles and the new scorecard each year and the thing and the. So, like, what's the rules? If you want to learn the rules for Mahjong, you need to talk to Susie. You really? Wow. Okay. So Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi is saying, look, let me give you this how to play this game, or how to be successful at this game. And this is how it starts. Rabbi Omer, Ezehu derech yeshara sheyavor lo ha'adam. Like, what is a path that one should follow? So it's basically, how do you play this game of life? What's the strategy of engaging life? Kol shehi tiferet la'osehu v'tiferet lo min ha'adam. See, I disagree with this translation here. That which brings honor to the one who does it, as well as respect from one's fellow human beings. I'm curious because what the translator here is, that's not the way it's usually translated. In other words, what it's first is saying, that which brings honor to the one who does it, as well as respect from one's fellow human beings. So in other words, the Rambam talks about this as like 50%. That you as a person should stand on your own 2 feet, and you should be aware that you are doing things, like I tell my kids, not to be copycats. Like, just because everyone in school is doing it, I don't care. Right? Like they say, my kids tell me, and they don't even understand it. They say, but Dad, everyone's doing this. And I say, here's a quarter, call someone who cares. Right? That doesn't make any sense to them because a quarter doesn't, for the phone, right? It doesn't work anymore. So they're like, what are you talking about? But basically, I don't care what everyone else is doing. Mostly. But then, so you should stand on your own 2 feet. Like, do what brings honor to the person who's doing it. So when my son says, but everyone was talking in class. Well, I don't care. That's not what the teacher wanted. So just because your idiot friend was talking, that doesn't mean you should be talking, right? Like, that's. But then the text is saying this is that you can't ignore what's going on in society either. And you should, as well as respect from one's fellow human beings, you should check yourself to make sure that, am I doing something that's also seen as respectable? Or am I, because there's a tendency that sometimes that we can make excuses for ourselves. We claim righteousness. We think we're doing the right thing, or at least we convince ourselves we're doing the right thing. And then when people tell us that we're not, we get indignant. No, like you're just, I'm going to stand strong on my principles. Well, the Mishnah here is saying we have to be attentive to both. We have to be attentive to like doing what we feel is honorable. And at the same time, our eyes should be open of what's viewed as honorable in the world around us. So that way we should be both have our ear towards our like inner moral compass as well as the moral compass of the world. Any reactions to that? You're getting a lot of exercise.
I kind of. Thank you. I understand the concept. You must be sensitive to other opinions. Problem is, if you are too sensitive and you don't know when you are sensitive enough or not enough,
That's right.
you get confused.
Yeah.
You don't know which way is the right way for you, because the right way for you may not be the right way for me. So, yes, as Isu would say, yes, keep your ears open because, you know, you're not perfect. You make mistakes. However, have the spine to say, no, that's not right. At least not right for me. And that is a very, very thin line, very critical line, and very difficult line to
Yeah, right. And that's the commentators acknowledge that, right? So essentially what they're saying is there is no formula, but you should be strong and listen to your own moral compass and aware of what brings honor in circles around you. And if you gain that, now it can be confusing and difficult, but if you are both aware of, if you're aware of both, you'll end up doing okay. Because someone who only acts based on what other people are doing, well, that's when you find yourself like, you know, pitching a tent and sleeping in the courtyard of Columbia University. Oh, well, everyone says from the river to the sea. Everyone's doing it. Huh. And at the same time, if we only become attuned to our own narrative and our own moral compass and lose track of what brings honor in society, we are in danger of falling victim to our own, sometimes we sell ourselves bridges in Brooklyn because we want to believe that what we are saying is true. Okay, so that's the first part. And it says here, be as attentive to a minor mitzvah as to a major one, for you do not know the reward for each of the mitzvot. What does that mean? Yeah, go ahead, Nadia. Or I can repeat it, but go ahead. Yeah, you can take the microphone.
There are those big things like no adultery or no murder. And then there are small things like eating challah on Pesach, and you should do all.
Right. Right. So in positive mitzvot, not negative ones. So a negative mitzvah is adultery. But in positive mitzvot, remember, in the theology here is there's a scorecard. So I want to know, I asked Susie Katz, she knows, wait, is Mahjong with the cards or is it with tiles? So I want to know if the red tile is worth as much as the green tile. And so it's saying here, is the making Kiddush on Shabbat the same value as going to shul on Shabbat? Which one's worth more? Okay, so it's the Mishnah here says don't get involved in the scorecard. You think that you're racking up the points with like what you think are the big mitzvot. You're like, I'm not going to. Are there small like tiles in Mahjong that you like are like they're throwaway, they're like pawns? All right, but there are also patterns where you don't win, right? Like, okay, so maybe I should like only make analogies or things I know about. I don't even know what I'm going to leave Mahjong alone. Okay, all right. So it's like chess. You can get a whole bunch of pawns, but those aren't worth much. So you may strategize and say, I'm going for the big pieces. Right. But what here it's saying is we don't know. The Torah doesn't tell us which mitzvah, like the Torah doesn't tell us a point system for mitzvot. So don't create a hierarchy in your mind of points. Yeah, Bridget, go ahead. Go ahead.
That's like what we read where you can fast, but then you're not kind to your fellow human beings, so it's no good fasting.
Right. Because then you can say, oh, like I'm a good Jew. I do all the big mitzvot. Parenthetically, I'm a jerk, right? So the tradition here is saying don't think you're the arbiter, you're the one who's like in charge of the scorecard here. Again, I don't believe in the theology of this, but what Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is trying to say is, don't, I'm on Yom Kippur I fast. I don't drive on Yom Kippur. Like that's what the people do. Like people like make it sound like I go to shul every Shabbat. I put on tefillin every day. I am so saintly. Like people who start to like think about like the big mitzvot and the small mitzvot usually go for the big mitzvot and then start getting a big head. And so it's saying don't do that. Don't do that. Be as attentive to a minor mitzvah in terms of what you think is a minor as a major one, for you don't know the reward. You have no idea. Okay, here's the next thing, and we'll weigh the loss incurred in performing a mitzvah against the gain. Conversely, weigh the gain of a transgression against the loss. In other words, be aware that, you're going to like that there is cost to your actions, right? Closing the store on Shabbat does cost you something, but also does it gain you something? Now, it's not going to gain you dollars and cents, but it'll gain you time with your family, So you have to realize that that there's a complicated calculus. Okay, now it says, ponder 3 things, and you will avoid committing a transgression. V'histakel b'shlosha devarim, v'iyata ba liyadei avera. Like, look on 3 things if you don't want to come to a sin. And that is, keep in mind what is above you, an eye that sees, an ear that hears, and a book, that's the book of life, in which all your deeds are recorded. Okay. So that is one Mishnah from Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, who said there is a complicated calculus for the mitzvot, but don't be the one who starts to think about it. And look, we all do that. We all are people who I'm going to do the major things. And it warns us against that, because then we start to think that we're so holy. It breeds a holier than thou attitude. And how do we know? How do we know what we're judged for? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Well, I like controversial. Controversial. So the good thing about controversial questions, they'll either answer it or say, I'm sorry, we're out of time.
Maybe other people could answer it too. With what's going on campuses today, can you hear me? How do you apply this to what is happening on campuses today? What's the role of the Jewish students? Just to stand back and let it roll? I mean, there was counter protesters at UCLA, and you wonder, were they doing the right thing or not? I don't know. I'm just questioning right now.
Sure.
What is our role as Jews with what's going on right now on campuses?
Okay, good. So then come on May 28th, No, I'm going to answer it now too. Look, I think it's clear. I think we have to be loud. I think we have to be strong. I think we have to be educated. I think we have to be sensitive. And it's a small group of people, obviously, who went, like, I am in favor of the counter protesters up until whoever was that got violent. That wasn't okay. As reprehensible as I think that encampment is, and is absolutely, I don't understand. I was so proud to be a graduate of Washington University in St. Louis. When they had the stuff, they had an encampment. The chancellor of the school cleared it out right away and then wrote a letter to the entire community. And it basically said, on my campus, free speech is not calling for the eradication of another group. We don't do that. This is not tolerated. If you don't think your actions have, you do something like that, you'll be arrested each and every time. You don't like it, tough. And that was the email that he sent. And what a breath of fresh air that was, as opposed to drive, and I'm getting a little controversial here, 5 hours north where you have Northwestern, which is like, oh, let's make a deal with you and let's talk to you and find out. And it's like giving legitimacy to something that is, I think, is hateful and terrible. And I think so I think we have an obligation. But I think we have an obligation also to be lawful. I also think the way I apply this Mishnah is that let's not only be Jews. Like the most important calling right now is probably Zionism and Israel and against anti-Semitism. But let's not only be Jews who are occupied with that. In other words, don't think like those are the big mitzvahs, and then we forget about all the rest of the stuff. Like, be Shabbat Jews also. Be Jews who recognize the beauty of the ethics of our tradition and the literature and the prayers and the poetry and all of the great stuff. Like, don't just be, they hate us and I'm going to fight against that Jew. Because that may be the big mitzvah, but you never know the reward for the small mitzvah, which is doing an act of chesed. And you never know where that leads you either. So those are important things too. All right, that's the time for today. We'll continue in a little bit more organized. I'm sorry I was a little all over the place today, but we'll continue in a more organized fashion next week. And I hope everyone has a great week. Next week? But I got 6 chapters to study with you. All right, I'll pull one highlight. Oh, okay, good one. Oh, you're already trying to rope me in before, yeah. I come cheap. I'm cheap labor. Can everyone put their books on the cart on their way out? Put their books on the cart. That's all right, I got it. Remind me of that on Saturday. Yeah, but where is it here? Hold on, I'll find it for you. Okay. Yeah. That's a great. Yeah, that's good. Page 448. Yeah, right here is Hatikva, and then it's here's the I gotta run, I got a meeting. Esther, I'm sorry for stealing your book.
Okay.
You should charge me for it.
I manage somehow.
Okay. It's nice to see you.